Good morning. Again, I've decided to look at Psalm 22 this morning for devotions. And in looking at Psalm 22, I'm going to read out of Mark 15, verse 34. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is to be interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? We ask questions, we ask why. We ask why out of curiosity. Why doesn't it rain? We ask why out of frustration. Why is this person driving so slow when I'm on my way to church? We ask why in defiance. Why should I? Sometimes why can be a silly or petty question, like I don't really need an answer. Why does my boss want me to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning or something? But other times it's the deepest question that we have. Why is a country I love being ravaged by war? By a country that some may have called one of the superpowers of the world? Why does my sister deal with anxiety and depression? Why can't I sleep at night? Why was my brother-in-law taken from my sister at such a young age? Why was I born? But why doesn't just have to be about us and what we go through, but also for God in the Bible. Many verses in the Bible say something like this: Why standest thou far off, O Lord? I will say unto God, my rock, why hast thou forgotten me? Why dost thou cast me off? Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise, cast us not off forever. Why hidest thou face from me? Here's one. O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why are you sleeping, O Lord? Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? Why have you forsaken me? And when you're going through this, when why isn't just a question, we ask because we're discussing maybe religious things or everyday things, or just asking why for the fun of it. When you are really overwhelmed by why and not getting an answer, it may in the end feel like God has just left. A quote from C.S. Lewis after his wife died from a book called A Grief Observed. Meanwhile, where is God? This is one of the most disquieting symptoms when you are happy, so happy that you have no sense of needing Him. So happy that you may be tempted to feel His claims upon you as an interruption. If you remember yourself and turn to Him with gratitude and praise, You will be, or so it seems, welcomed with open arms. But go to him when your need is desperate, when all other help is vain, and what do you find? A door slammed in your face, and a sound of bolting and double bolting on the inside. After that, silence. You may as well turn away. The longer you wait, the more emphatic the silence will become. There are no lights in the windows. It might be an empty house. Was it ever inhabited? It seemed so once. And that seeming was as strong as this. What can this mean? Why is he so present a commander in our time of prosperity and so very absent a help in time of need, in time of trouble? Still, Lewis, I tried to put some of these thoughts to a friend this morning. He reminded me that the same thing seems to have happened to Christ. Why hast thou forsaken me? I know, does that make it any easier to understand? End quote. I think no. Jesus' being forsaken does not make our forsakenness any easier to understand. Even if we did know why, would that really help? Would it make it any better if we did know why Jesus was forsaken? Why David the psalmist was forsaken? Why I was forsaken? If we really did know why, would that make it any more tolerable for us? Even if we had a perfect understanding of why that person or this person was taken from us, would that make it any more easier? They're still not coming back? Answers are no comfort. Enlightened suffering is still suffering. Maybe understanding why isn't all it's cracked up to be. Well, think about this. Maybe when we're asking why, we're not really expecting an answer. Maybe we're just making a statement. Maybe it just needs to come out. Think again. Jesus asking, why have you forsaken me on the cross? Do you think he was really expecting an answer? And surely he knew the other Bible verses, he will never leave you nor forsake you, or the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Why not those? I think the point is not to get an answer at all. The point is, here is this anguish. I need to express it. I don't know if everybody in here has had an experience like that. I know I've asked why. And maybe not everybody in here knows the forsakenness that I'm talking about. And I'm sure that some of you do. And maybe we know others that have had these experiences of darkness and silence. Others around us, when they ask why and look for God and find only this wall of silence, how do we respond? And let me be clear, I believe there is not a once and for all answer. But maybe there are postures that we can take towards these questions. So one way we can do it is to approach it triumphantly. With idealism and optimism, triumphalism, I am all about triumph because, Jesus did conquer death, hell, and the grave. He really did. But triumphalism is like winning only by winning. And taking that view is like saying, well, God is omnipresent, and the forsakenness you feel must just be an illusion. Because, God has conquered, so it's not a big deal. Is it? Like the suffering you're going through, it's not a big deal. And isn't all you have to do is just acknowledge God's sovereignty, and then the suffering and the forsakenness will all just dissolve like a bad taste in your mouth? And from a purely objective point of view, it may be true that God is omnipresent and omnipotent. A quote from Reed Dent. The trouble, though, with this purely objective point of view is that you are not an object. You are a subject. We subjects do not do pure objectively very well. When we're in the middle of subjective terrors like cancer and inexplicable sorrows, or just total disconnection from God, like the experience of God's absence really is true. You can't just wipe it away with your triumphant get over it. The triumphalist approach to somebody who is suffering and that they feel that they are forsaken, you're like, it's all good because God is omnipotent and omnipresent. It's like telling somebody that's in the middle of an asthma attack and they're gasping for air. And you say, hey, there's air everywhere, man. It's all around you. End quote. We can also approach this question nihilistically. You can approach it with cynicism and despair, and it goes like this. Forsakenness is the only reality, and so we should just stop trying to make a big deal about things that ultimately mean nothing. There's no meaning behind your suffering. That's fair enough. And I think that people that think like this still have this deep yearning for something more. Like they're yearning for something that they won't allow themselves to believe in. And believing like this, like nothing matters, like forsakenness is all there is, it might shield you from the pain and the suffering, but it also creates a barrier for joy and happiness. Like you don't just get to choose where it stops sapping the life. Like you don't just get to choose where it starts sapping the significance out of life. So your losses mean nothing, but then your gifts mean nothing also. But I think there's another way to approach this question. We can approach it incarnationally. And I believe it is this: the suffering, the grief, the experience of God's absence are very real. Yet also paradoxically, so is the God who is there really enfleshed in it. So for the experience of God's absence to be real, and get this, as well as God's presence with us in that absence. It's like a paradox. But it comes together in Jesus himself hanging there on the cross. God in flesh crying out, God, why have you forsaken me? So triumphalism says your suffering is nothing compared to all of the good that God has for you. Nihilism says your suffering is all there is. But the incarnation says God suffers with you. This is what the suffering Jesus on the cross tells you. This is what the suffering Jesus tells us. The suffering Jesus weeping at the tomb of his friend Lazarus that had just died. The incarnation. God shows us that he does intimately know our suffering, our grief, even the experience of where God is. He knows it. He bears with us and carries for us the things that are so unbelievably unbearable to us. So the incarnation response to this answer, in a sense, that explains these experiences. So the incarnational response is not an answer in a sense that it explains these experiences. Trust me, it explains nothing. And again, explanation isn't worth as much as we think it's worth. It's not a comfort. But there are accounts of people everywhere looking, pointing, experiencing deep comfort, saying God is with us. When I look at the crucified Christ, God says, I know. I suffered beside you. I know. I love you. So many notions of God or of gods are like they are somewhere doing something else. Maybe sometimes they win, and maybe we benefit from their winning sometimes. But they don't know us. And of God being afar off, we might even be tempted to think of the God of our Bible this way. Like, what about Job when he loses everything? He's asking why about his suffering. And remember how he's met? With that voice from the whirlwind? I mean, come on. How realistic is that? Who can relate to that? And what is the message? Like, I am God. You wouldn't understand what it's like to be God. A quote from Ahmed Majmudar, from a poem by him. Do you feel it down your left arm when your heart thirsts for blood and when it thirsts for friendship? Do you feel it in your throat and try to swallow? Does gravity wear on your posture? Does death creep over fields toward you like the shadow of a white cloud flattening the grass as it advances over? Tell me, has the desire ever stripped the stringy husk off of your mind and shown you still unripe? This is to God in the whirlwind. If I had been there when you measured out the earth, would you have made it more my size? Do you know how to work with a shovel? Is it graves or foundations you know how to dig? Could you tie me a tourniquet if I required one? How about shoelaces? Speaking of which, do you have any idea what it's like to trip and fall? And when you do not expect it, arms shooting out, we double over like we've just been punched and thump a few steps forth. But we stay on our feet, and if a hand is there to catch us, brush us off, it is not yours. Speak if you have something more than wisdom. Speak if you have sympathy. End quote. This is what the forsaken need. Not wisdom, not answers, sympathy. Does God have it? To Majmudar's poem, the triumphalistic, nihilistic answers offer nothing. God speaks nothing through them. But through his incarnate Son, he speaks more than wisdom. He speaks divine sympathy. Yes, he knows what it feels like when your heart thirsts for blood and for friendship. He was betrayed by the closest to him. Yes, he knows what it's like for death to creep over fields. He saw his crucifixion coming and he pleaded, begged for it to be stopped. Yes, he can tie you a tourniquet and he can wash your feet. All of this that Majmudar gives, this aggravated voice to God, God replies to it in Jesus. And not just the suffering. He is with us in all of life. When he brought out the best wine at the wedding. When he had compassion on the tired, hungry, and cast away crowd and gave them something to eat. When he insisted on the kids not being shooed away. When he got between an adulteress and her accusers. When he wept at seeing his dead friend. When he said, I thirst. And when he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Psalm 22 goes on. Why are you so far from saving me? From the words of my groaning. Be not far from me, but you, O Lord, be not far off. You hear that word again and again. Far. Far. The question why becomes a plea of where. Of what matters most. Nearness. Be close. Maybe in our crying out, in our anger and confusion, and our friends crying out in their anger and confusion, why have you forsaken me? Maybe we can detect a more sensitive longing of where are you? Why may never be answered, but where might. For us, the answer to Jesus' question, where, why, is in the asking it. Where's God? He's here suffering with us. And he also suffers for us. Who imagines this scene and remembers Isaiah 53, verse 5? He was pierced for our transgressions. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds we are healed. Psalm 22 ends with hope. It starts with, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far off? Why are you hiding from me? It starts there, but then it spreads out. The suffering servant, the Psalm 22 psalmist, moves from anguish to tell of the name of God. First to the brothers, then to the congregations, then to the offspring of Israel, now moving out to the afflicted, and all the way to the ends of the earth. Psalm 22. Even those who have gone down to death, and yet to those unborn. No corner is left untouched. I wonder if Jesus had this in his mind when he quoted Psalm 22. And he's thinking of the whole thing. It's up to us to figure it out. And so it ends up sounding a lot like something else we may have heard from Jesus. His final words. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Nothing gets left untouched. And somehow this life of victory, this triumph, somehow it comes through the way of being forsaken and of going down into death and being raised again. What began with, why have you forsaken me, now ends with salvation spreading like a wild holy fire. And finally, the very last words, which are appropriate. To begin with Jesus on the cross, why have you forsaken me? To end with the resurrected Jesus. I am with you always to the end of the age. Thank you.